Well, good evening. It's 5:30, and I'd like to call to order a meeting of the Mayor's Neighborhood Safety Task Force. Will the clerk please call the roll? Well, Jolinda, can you please call the roll?
Chris Storr, Marianne Downey, Megan McGinty, James Moreland,
Here.
Diane Marlin,
Here.
John Rosca,
Here.
Teresa Michelson,
Here.
Kathy Wallach,
Here.
Norma Linton,
Here.
Esther Papp.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I would remind folks, if you want to speak, make sure you push the button on your microphone so the green light is on, and that way we can hear you and people watching can hear you as well. Next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the previous two meetings. We have minutes from February 21st and March 21st. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. I move to accept the minutes.
Moved by Rosca, seconded by
I second.
second. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seconded by Kathy Wallach. Any corrections to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving both sets of minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, they are approved. Next item on the agenda is public input. Does anyone wish to address the Neighborhood Safety Task Force? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the discussion topics. We had asked members of the task force if there were particular items that you wanted to hear reports on, and one of those requests related to a crime update specifically related to daytime break-ins, and Police Chief Sylvia Morgan will be presenting that report. We do have a new police chief since this committee last met, so I'd like to introduce Sylvia Morgan.
Hi. I know several of you. Okay, so I think I gave everybody a copy of this, the crime analyst put together in the last couple days. And just to kind of go over the front sheet, she's given kind of an account of crime in general. And then the second page is specifically about the daytime or burglaries in general, and breaking them down by hours of the day. So on the front page, she gives some historical data, obviously back to 2012 all the way up through 16, and those numbers are for the same reporting period, January through June of those years specifically, not for the entire years. And then comparing those to what we have already in this year. So the next column past that then kind of showing what the change is just from 2017 from 2016. And then also the next column being an average of 2012 to 2016. And so for those of us that aren't statistic smart like myself, I got an explanation of the last two columns, the standard deviation and what the Z-score means. And basically in the Z-score column, if the number is not highlighted, it means that it's basically kind of what we would expect it to be based on the standard deviation of how the crimes have been the last few years. And then if it's in pink, it means that we've had an increase in those. It's more than what we would expect. And if they're in green, they're less than what we would have expected them to be. So at the very bottom, then we have some statistics on our shots fired calls that we've been collecting. 2012, 13, and 14, we were keeping records differently than we are in 15 and 16, since we had an uptick in shootings and violent behavior crimes involving shootings, and then also homicides. In 2015, we changed how we were tracking those. So for instance, if somebody calls into METCAD, the dispatch center, and says, we heard shots fired, and the police show up, if they were able to find something, or either casings, whether there was somebody was actually shot as a victim, but if we were able to find evidence of something and we could confirm for sure that there were shots fired, we're having somebody, since 2015, we've been having somebody go through the dispatch tickets every single day and making sure that any shots fired calls are verified, if that makes sense. So we were able to like do a little more digging on a daily basis and have much more accurate numbers since 2015. That's why 15 and 16, 2014 shows some pretty high numbers, but we weren't tracking it quite the same way. So anything before 15 is not as accurate. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that we've been tracking them and verifying them much better in a much better way since 2015. Does anybody have any questions about that first page?
Teresa?
Is the drug number down because of the way it's the marijuana? I know it wasn't decriminalized, but it's, you know, they don't pick people up for a certain amount of marijuana, right?
Correct. Well, this does include state violations and ordinance violations. That it's true that we don't for the minimal amounts of drugs, they're not. I wouldn't count this decrease necessarily because of that. A couple things have happened over the last couple years, which is we've joined our street crimes unit is joined with the other jurisdictions units, and they formed the street crimes task force in response to all of the shootings that we'd been having. And so they've been working jointly together, and I think that would also have an effect on our numbers because of just the way they're functioning as a group, and they're working out of the Champaign Police Department. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're not working on drugs in Urbana as well and shootings. It's just a mere way of the tracking system for how they do the reporting for the task force, if that makes sense. Because they're the University of Illinois, Champaign County Sheriff's Department, Champaign Police, and the Urbana Police all work together. Does that make sense? So that could also account for it. So I wouldn't want to say that definitively that is why that number would be down.
Any other questions?
I guess I have one. Since I asked the old chief, I'll ask the new chief. When was the last time that the Urbana Police discharged a weapon?
Discharge a weapon at, let's say, I'm not going to get the year right, but it was in the early 2000s.
So it's been a long.
It's been a long time. We had a police officer that out in Eastern Urbana, there was someone that had attacked a deputy and took his gun from him and then fled, if you remember that, into the Scottswood subdivision area. And so our police officer happened to be involved in stopping a vehicle that was leaving the area, and they found the suspect who tried to reach for the gun, and
But
he was
it's
shot.
like 10 years ago.
More than 10 years ago,
Okay.
yes.
And then, I don't even know, so I'll confess my ignorance. Do you use tasers now?
We do have tasers, yes.
And do you keep a record of how often those are used?
Yes, absolutely.
So like, any idea in 2017 how often?
I don't believe we discharged a taser in 2017. We did have one discharge, I believe, in 2016, although off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure we've only had one discharge since we've had the tasers. We had them 2 years in March. And I believe we only had the one discharge. All of them are reviewed by the Civilian Police Review Board. Actually, not just a discharge, but any display of our taser is also reviewed by the Civilian Police Review Board. And I didn't bring those numbers with me. There have been quite a few displays, but I believe there's only been one discharge.
Okay, I'm just curious, since we're
Yeah.
going through statistics, I just was curious about those
Yeah.
statistics too. Thank you.
I would just like to comment that it is true there's only been one discharge.
Okay, thank you. That's the only one I could think of, but I was like, oh, I didn't want to say 100% I was accurate about that. Okay.
I believe the board reviewed 8 displays. Is that the number that,
Just this last period?
yeah. Or about
I don't even think it was 8.
Okay, all right.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
In total, I think there's been less than 20, I would say that, but I don't know. There may be more than 10 that where we've actually pulled it out, and then the person complied, so we didn't have to use it. So that's.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, so the second page shows specifically residential burglaries and home invasions for the entire city. You can look on the map, and any place in yellow you'll see it, even if there's just one incident, it's going to be yellow, or, excuse me, if there is more than one incident in an area within a certain radius, it'll show a yellow connector, like as these are hot spots. This is called hotspot mapping. And as the number grows from more than 2 on up, it'll turn orange. You'll have orange spots on here and then red spots. It's kind of hard to see individually. I don't have the exact numbers in those red spots, but there's definitely more than 3 within a certain radius in the areas where you see the red. Now, as far as the times of day, she's got that broken down at the bottom, and 66% of the burglaries are happening between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Now, what'll happen, sometimes people come home from work, you know, after 5 o'clock, and they don't know specifically what time, you know, the house was broken into, so they'll kind of put a range on there. They're not sure if it happened right after they left at 8 o'clock in the morning, or if it happened right before they come home at 5, but it still gives us a time range. That's why she kind of put that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in there, because there's a lot of that happening where the person is gone all day for work and not really certain what time something might have occurred. So you can see well over half of them do occur during the daytime hours. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Kathy?
I read the media reports that
Right.
are online. I'm having a problem with this one in the Silver Water area. There's just one in 6 months. If you go down
yeah.
Mumford,
I mean-
there at the bottom of the map.
So my crime analyst pulled this. I would assume that it is accurate. She's very good at what she does.
I'm not going to doubt her
But
capabilities.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. I can certainly have her recheck the numbers and email you or email the group. But again, I would find it hard to believe that she missed, unless something was put into the system wrong and that didn't pick it up. Possibly, that could be a possibility. But if you're reading them in the media reports and they have the right address on them, then that shouldn't be happening.
Right. There's, you know, just the 2,000 block of water alone would have more than one. So,
In the last 6 months.
oh, definitely. So, maybe that ought to be rechecked, but.
So residential burglaries, not just vehicle burglaries or something, which are extremely, actually, look, they're down this year, but they're always high. So you're speaking.
Oh, yeah, residential, vehicle burglaries would be all over the place. I
Right.
understand that. No, residential, definitely. I'm not going to doubt her or the system, but it just looks very peculiar given what I read every day. There was,
Yeah, there's
there
a-
was just one 2 days ago.
Yeah, I guess I can't speak to whether, I mean, how accurate it is. Obviously, I didn't
Well,
pull the
I'm
data. I
gonna
can
go
certainly
for-
have her recheck it
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind. if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
absolutely.
Okay, thank
I
you.
completely understand what you're asking.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What's the difference between residential burglaries and home invasions?
So a residential burglary is generally when there's nobody home, but if somebody is actually physically in the home, then that would be called a home invasion. There were only 6 of those, I believe she says down here. Yeah, 6. There were only 6 of those.
And how are those denoted on this?
They're not differentiated, honestly, but she did tell me verbally that 4 of them are up there where you, around Oakland and Kerr, where you see that.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 of the 6 were up there. I do know that just because she specifically brought that to my attention when we were talking about this. I don't know where the other 2 are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Oakland Kerr area sort of a new pocket of activity?
We seem to be having an uptick of calls for service. Yes.
In that apartment complex, you don't know offhand who owns it, but I have a feeling it must not be the folks that owned it.
Lieutenant Sanders is addressing this issue through our problem properties meetings. Yeah.
It changed ownership 2
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Do you have a sense of how the this year's burglaries compared to previous years? Champagne's been experiencing a real uptick in
Well, she, on the front
residential
page,
burglaries.
has the burglaries, the burglary reports, and they are kind of in the range that we would expect. So this year we had 105. For the same time frame last year we had 121. So it's down slightly, but it's still within the standard deviation.
So we haven't seen a...
Haven't seen a huge increase, no.
It just may be that some neighborhoods that have not experienced it in the past
Right.
are seeing it. And I
Yeah,
know
that's what I've
the
heard from
case
some
with Easter-
people.
Historic Easter Banner, I think,
Yes.
is seeing that. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
So it's just to understand this, so the numbers on the front here don't really have anything to do with the numbers on this chart, graph, pictogram.
Well, on the front, she's kind of giving you a lot of the more serious crimes and how they relate to the last few years and those sort of things, whether there's an increase or decrease. But specifically, burglary is one of those. So that's why I was just referring back to the front page. But the map is specifically just for the residential burglaries and home invasions, which was, I think, the specific question, but we also wanted to kind of give an overview of crime in general for people.
So for attempted burglary on the first page, okay, it's the total is 105.
For burglaries, attempteds are the smaller numbers underneath.
Uh-huh.
So she's saying burglaries were 105 and there were 29 attempted burglaries.
Where people like tried a door or went around,
Yeah,
didn't get in.
where they broke a window, an alarm went off, they got scared off by the person, or maybe they've tried to pry a door open or something, and we had some kind of evidence that they attempted to enter the residence.
Okay, thanks.
So armed or not armed is not distinguished.
No, and most of the residential burglaries, we wouldn't have any idea whether the person was armed or not. Now, the home invasions, you might be able to get that information
Yeah,
from.
makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Another request was for an Aspen Court update. And I guess John Schneider from Community Development will be doing that.
I think at the last meeting, we talked about the fact that TWG completed the purchase of the property. That's the new, now they have new ownership. Their tax credit application was actually submitted June 23rd, and they won't know the results of that until fall. But the IDA changed the process. They used to do 2 tax credit applications annually. Now they just went to 1. But we've been speaking with the manager. They have renovations planned, which are planned to begin in late August. They include installation of fencing and a gate. And I don't know if it's going to be motorized yet or what, but they're going to have, they say, with a key fob entry. So they're going to have controlled entry to the site. They are also working on repairing potholes in the roadway. That entire roadway from Hunter all the way around to Ivanhoe Way is private. It's all on they're responsible to maintain that. But part of the renovation process, from what we understand, is to include complete renewal of that roadway. They talk about installing a new roadway. I don't know if they're going to take up what's there and reinstall or do something over that. But anything, as you might know, would be an improvement. And finally, they're working on repairing the cameras on site so that they can better monitor what's happening out there. So that's the report. Monica Bailey is their apartment, now their new property manager. So our results in interacting with them so far have been pretty positive.
Is she present on site? All day,
Monica,
or-
I don't know what her hours are. I can find that out. But she's out there. I think she's out there during regular business hours. But I'll find that out.
Esther?
Thank you. So the new owner now is running the place, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so all these improvements you're talking about, they're the ones who are going to be doing that?
Right.
Okay, is there, or has there been, or is there going to be some comprehensive inspection of the properties that they're rehabbing to see what needs to be done before they just go ahead and do it?
Well, yeah, we will work with them to do an inspection of all the units. Actually, we're in the process of scheduling systematic inspection of the entire
Good.
site. Some of the buildings, as you know, have been vacant. Some of the roofs have been leaking. They've just kind of left them there. But we've been out there as a response to complaints. And the other thing is sometimes, you know, we've talked about this before, that the tenants aren't necessarily confident in their ability to you know, lodge a complaint with us, so we'll
Right.
go out there and do an inspection. But if we can find out what unit it is, we'll send our guys out there, however that information gets to us. But I think the best way is just to do a complete systematic inspection of the entire site.
I
Yeah.
agree. Leaks and mold
Right.
and infestation are the three things I just keep hearing about. I keep
Right.
referring them to you, and
Yeah.
thank you for taking care of that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Great, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Another request was perspective on what I would see as the task force role in moving forward. To be honest, I have been so busy the last couple of months, I really haven't had a chance to sit down and thoughtfully think about how we want to go, you know, proceed going forward. But I did want to get your input as far as, you know, members of the task force. Is there something different you'd like to see? How often would you like to meet? Do you want a different format? Just, you know, what are your thoughts on this before we make a whole lot of plans? Kathy?
Well, as I understand it, with the format being the Mayor's Neighborhood Safety Task Force, it is not really may not be the correct word, bona fide committee of the city structure.
No, it's not a board or commission. It was formed, I can't even think of the year, but at least 2010, maybe 2011, and in response to the neighborhood organizations asking for a little bit more
Right.
regular meeting time to
Right.
talk about safety issues. So, but it has not been a board or commission, although we do try to have representation from each of the neighborhood groups. And there's a new neighborhood organization actually that we need to get MUNA, Middle Urbana Neighborhood Association.
But we went for over 3 years without a meeting.
Yes, yeah.
And I understand a lot's been going on in the city during that time, but it was only when several of the neighborhoods got together because of the violence, the gun violence, that
Yes.
we appealed to the mayor to reconvene the meeting. So I don't know if the task force needs to be formalized. I don't see that happening under your whatever. The word escapes me.
Administration.
I'm sorry. Yes, very good. All right. But I don't know how others feel about having gone for 3 years with problems cropping up and nothing happening.
Yeah, Esther?
I think it'd be a good idea to set a regular meeting time, and then you can always cancel a meeting if there are no agenda items, which actually does happen with other groups. But we are a real existing body to the extent, this task force, to the extent what it is, it's a task force. And I know there are some, I'm not to wander too off topic, but there was a commission that didn't meet often that the city then got rid of, which Mayor Marlowe and I, just on our own opinion on that particular topic, thought was a big mistake. Don't eliminate the thing just because it doesn't have business. It's okay to exist and not meet for some time. And as far as our not having met, this task force not having met we should have fussed if people wanted the meeting, and probably would have happened. But I do think, I just know when I got the notice for this meeting initially, I had a conflict. I thought, oh, if I knew that it was the fourth Wednesday of every month and you might cancel, I would just put in my calendar for a year, fourth Wednesday of every month. And I think that'd be best for getting people here. But I don't know, I don't feel strongly we have to meet monthly, but I just think we should have a schedule set. And actually having the schedule is what makes us real,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, no, that's true, and we did meet on a regular basis in the early years, and 3 years is too long to go without meeting, especially, you know, the challenges facing us. So we can meet monthly, we can do quarterly. For example, Farmers Market Advisory Board meets on a quarterly basis, so there's an example for that. And I think for a while the Safety Task Force was doing it on a quarterly basis, which seemed to work okay. And then if something came up, we can always call another meeting. So would quarterly work for people, or do you want to meet more often? I mean, it's quarterly? Okay. Teresa?
I just have a feeling that, I mean, there are people on, who seem to be named the committee that are never here. And I don't know whether it's because this night is a bad night, or they're just not interested, or, you know, someone else should fill their shoes. And I don't think we have all the neighborhood organizations either, but do you?
I think we do. We did contact, this is the time of the year when we contact all members of all boards, commissions, task forces, and advisory committees to ask if people want to continue. And I believe we did notify everyone on the Neighborhood Safety Task Force, right, Jolinda? But we ask? We haven't. So that would be the one thing we need to do, is contact everybody currently listed to see if they want to continue serving. We do have one new person who wants to join, and he'd be a great addition. So we'll do that. And we'll update the list. So that's probably our first task to get us going forward. Yes, Norma?
A member of this group, whom I shall not name, Esther, keeps reminding me that I try to broaden this beyond safety, and I guess I would consider the issues that are brought up in Muna and elsewhere as quality of life issues. And it seems like so many of them aren't strictly safety in terms of gun violence and, you know, the more desperate aspects. And I was thinking, well, maybe we should have a second task force. And then I'm saying, no. But could this one be broadened in its scope to include quality of life issues, whatever that may mean, which we should discuss, I guess. That's
Yeah.
something I'd like to suggest.
Okay.
Mayor Marlin, I would like to see us be more active in sort of communications, bringing to the group, and as well as bringing it back to our neighbors. For example, this Fresh Start involvement that Urbana, I just learned, is doing new. I don't really have all the details on that, and I was very curious about it. And I'm sure most of my neighbors are as well, especially given some of the shootings that have taken place in our neighborhood.
Sure, yeah.
So where we can be advocates for
Absolutely.
next steps, and
Yeah.
we can know more before it goes to the public, and we can help perhaps usher things in with our neighbors.
So communication from us to the task force, so then you can share it with your neighborhood associations. Yeah, that absolutely is one of the things I want to do. And a lot developed in the 3 years the task force didn't meet, including the gun violence initiative and the community-wide attempts to address it. So, yeah, absolutely. As to quality of life, my preference is to keep it focused right now, because it certainly is. That's a large chunk to chew right there, especially with what we're doing to address gun violence and the neighborhood issues. So.
Well, yeah. So then I guess I'd like some further clarification as to what safety encompasses. You know, does it encompass refuse on lawns that never get picked up, chemical, you know, drop off? What kinds of things come under this?
Well, that's a good question. This has always been as far as I remember this task force, it's been, you know, it's kind of responded to what the neighbors have brought to it, and most of it has been crime related, and that's what the initial impetus for forming this was. Certainly we can, you know, there are nuisance issues, there are, it's a broad topic, but
Well, some of the people, for instance, in the Woona community want me to talk about the maintenance and repair of walkways, sidewalks, roads, which they say is a safety issue, and the clearance of snow by landlords. That's a safety issue. I mean, it's a safety issue, but it's not violent crime, so
yeah.
it is a little...
Well, what's your thought? What's your feelings?
I think maybe this is too restrictive, but to me, safety is where one's personal safety is affected by another person, not by a situation. We have formats in place for snow removal, garbage on lawns, those kinds of things. I don't feel personally threatened by those things. I feel personally threatened by people breaking into my home or into my vehicle. That's how I would define a safety issue.
Right, that's probably more reflective, too, of where you live, as opposed to where a lot of the residents of the Woona area live, in terms of what crime they perceive or what safety issues they perceive as relevant.
Okay, Teresa.
Yeah, I mean, I would second Kathy. I mean, in the sense that I don't think this is a body where we bring complaints where codes exist, and if you contact the right person in the city, it will be taken care of. I just don't think this is the venue. You know, call Jason, call John, call whatever. I'm not going to belabor that. And sometimes, you know, if you're knowledgeable, you are the one that can be shortcutting that process and telling people, no, here's, you know, here is who you need to call, and I'm not going to take 15 minutes of an hour meeting to talk about, I don't know, codes that aren't being enforced or sidewalks that aren't being cleared. I mean, I know we did snow removal because Mayor Pressing, I think, was interested in the city's language.
Well, we were
on-
developing
right?
an ordinance.
Right,
And then we
right.
also worked for a number of months on the aggravated nuisance ordinance, and she wanted neighborhood input on that. And that's one of the main things that this task force did in the first few years was work on specific ordinances, and I think that was a very valuable experience for everybody. So when that kind of input is needed from the neighborhoods, then this group really has a role to play. So, and I see that continuing, absolutely. But we'll think, I'll think about that. I just really think the focus should stay on our more narrow definition here. But what we can do, and that falls back to communication, is make sure that the task force members have the information that they can share with the neighborhood associations about who to call, even though we feel like we say it over and over again. This city is never the same city twice, and there's always new people in your neighborhood, so we can make sure you've got the information for who to call for tall grass and junk in the yards and loud parties and all those things that affect quality of life in the neighborhoods, and that affects every neighborhood as well. So we can communicate that information for sure.
I could see a meeting given over to that kind of thing. You know, a couple of people from the city. I mean, even a picture show with information like, okay, here's this building. You can't call this in because, I don't know, the paint doesn't match, or there's a shingle off the roof. But here's the kind of thing that could be called in from an exterior situation, right? Because Esther, correct me, we might know something's really bad inside an apartment, but if you don't live there, I don't think you can call it in, right? Someone living there has to do that, so there's sort of a limit. And so it might be interesting to just generally, because we're sort of the disseminators to the neighborhood, to find out what can and can't be helped by the city, I suppose you say.
Yeah. So we can do we can communicate with task force members on a much more regular basis too, which I intend to want to. I want to do that as well. So we'll get a better idea of what the role will be moving forward. But certainly, if there's relevant ordinances that need to be developed, I'd see this input from the task force to be very important. And you all as communicating back to your neighborhood associations is very important as well. And then responding to topics that come up in the neighborhood related to safety, and then we'll get a kind of a structure plan for going forward. And quarterly, I think we'll plan for quarterly meetings. Is this day and time of the day work? 5:30 on a Wednesday? Okay. Okay, we'll see. The last item we had as a discussion topic was the Fresh Start update. I just added this because some of you are new, and while I've been deeply involved in it, I'm realizing not everyone is familiar with it. So just to recap, the Fresh Start initiative grew out of the Community Coalition, which is a broad-based coalition comprised of people living in Champaign, Urbana, Savoy, other cities and villages in the county, representatives from the university, many different social service organizations, law enforcement community, from the sheriff's department to the police departments to the state's attorney's office, the Community Coalition was formed probably 5-6 years ago now in response to a officer-involved shooting in Champaign. And it was formed to address that issue and the issue of police-community relations. With the uptick in gun violence that was seen several years ago, a subcommittee, a subgroup from that coalition was formed to address specifically gun violence. And about 15 to 20 of us traveled to Peoria back in 2015. We attended a conference that focused on a specific approach to gun violence called the Focused Deterrent Approach. It was based on a book by David Kennedy called Don't Shoot, and we met with officials from Peoria and other communities who had used this approach, and we decided that it would be worthwhile to try it here. So the Focused Deterrent Approach has 3 prongs. It involves law enforcement, it involves community members, and it involves a social service component. And what makes it different is that it's embedded in the community, it came from the community, and each of those 3 prongs has an equal role in this. We've had, and the other thing that makes it different, instead of this broad throw out a net and pick up everybody in it, we focused on the individuals and identified the individuals who were most likely to be involved in gun violence based on their past history. And so it's a very focused approach to the people most likely to be either involved in violence or associated with those involved in violence. And we've had 2 call-ins. The centerpiece of this is a call-in component where these individuals are brought in. They're given basically a choice. If they continue with the violence, they will face the law enforcement consequences. If they choose to put down their guns and stop being involved in gun violence, then resources from the community are available to help address basically the issues that they're facing in their lives, and each person is different. Earlier this year we were awarded, the Fresh Start initiative was awarded a grant, a $127,000 grant. This is being administered by the city of Champaign. The grant enabled the group to hire a coordinator, and also part of the conditions of the grant were a research component to kind of to look at factors contributing to gun violence and the motivation and that sort of thing. So we're currently involved in collecting data required by the grant, as well as continuing to work with the individuals. With the 2 call-ins, there were a group of 6 of the 9 individuals called in first, I believe, basically took took us up on our offer of help and are working with our case manager. And in the second group, a slightly higher number. I'm not sure how many are currently who have stuck with it at this point, but we have had the 2 call-ins. So the cities and all the agencies involved in Fresh Start have, last Monday we just signed a memorandum of understanding between our police department and that outlines specifically what our police department would be doing as part of this group. And City of Urbana, along with City of Champaign and other agencies, are very actively involved in this. So the it's an innovative approach. It's a long-term approach. It gets at some of the root causes of violence. It's not going to change, it's not going to stop violence overnight. But I really think it holds a lot of promise, and we've made a lot of progress. So that's where we are. We're committed to it. The city also supports the community coalition with $5,000 a year, and that comes out of our police department budget. So we'll continue to give updates on that as well. And some community members, you may have gotten an invitation to attend one of the call-ins. Each time we've had a call-in, we've sent invitations to representatives from each of the neighborhood groups. So if you're interested in attending the next call-in, let me know, and we can get you on the list and as a representative of either your neighborhood association or this task force. It's a remarkable experience. I think Kathy's gone to one. Has anyone else in here? You attended one, James? Yeah. Twice. You went to both of them. Yes. So I'd encourage you to attend if you get the opportunity next time. So.
Mayor Marlin?
Yeah.
So what is happening now that we're hearing news reports about involvement from the City of Urbana with Fresh Start? What's new about that?
What's new?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I get. There's nothing new. We've been involved from the beginning.
That's what my thought
Yeah.
was when I
Yeah.
heard the news report. I'm like, wait a minute, did I hear that right? So I thought something new was taking
Oh, well,
place. or-
perhaps the new thing that occurred was Monday night. The City Council approved the memorandum of agreement, which is part of the grant requirements.
Okay.
So we're fulfilling one of the terms of the grant is that each of these agencies and cities involved have an MOU in place. So a lot of what we were doing on an informal basis is now being formalized because of the grant requirements. So, but no, there's nothing new as far as our involvement. We're in it, and we've been in it from the very beginning. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Reports from neighborhood groups. Wow. Okay. Megan.
I was just rather curious if anyone in the city has heard any more from Habitat for Humanity. I know they were trying to get more people involved in actually formulating a neighborhood committee for my neighborhood. I don't know what we would be. Nuna? I'm not sure. I live in North Urbana. I live in the King Park neighborhood. And I know I have spoken with several folks, some folks moving into the new Habitat houses. And we have had some issues occurring around King School the last few weeks. And folks have, just informally come to me and kind of talked about, wanting to have more information on what's going on in the neighborhood. So has the city heard anything? And also, would any of you wonderful folks from other neighborhood associations like to meet with me informally and help me formulate something?
Doesn't UCAN cover that area?
Oh, I can cover that area, but I would like to formally, I know that like Historic East Urbana, where I used to live, I know they have like a Facebook page. They have regular communications with each other. They have neighborhood, meetings. And I would just like some more information on how to get
How to do
something,
that.
how to do it.
Oh, okay, all right.
And Libby Tyler, and we should acknowledge that this is Libby Tyler's final week with the city of Urbana, and we'll be celebrating her many, many accomplishments tomorrow. But
Yeah.
thank you.
Been a part of the task force since it started as well.
Yeah.
Habitat is working on a neighborhood plan. It's been maybe a little slow to start in the King Park neighborhood, but I know they've been working with one of the churches. I'm not remembering which one, but they're working on a community garden, so you might know which church they've been working with, and we hope with when school starts up again that they'll have some planning students who can work with them and do more of the planning activities. There is another city-sponsored group that meets at King School, United. It's a police administered group, UCAP. So UCAN no longer really exists, but UCAP meets, I think, every 2 months in King School, and that's a great place for that neighborhood to get together and talk about safety issues right in that neighborhood, plus other events. And there's city folks, Park District, School District, Public Works, so there's a very good, it's a small group, a very good dialogue. I think it would be fantastic for your neighborhood to have a more official vehicle, like a website or a listserv, or even just an email, because the city has so many events and so many opportunities that we can send to, folks in the Woona and Suna and Huna and, a lot of the neighborhoods, and that's been a little bit of a gap. We haven't had a liaison, so that would be great to get that started.
I would also like to see it, it get started at this point. We have all those homes coming up, and the neighborhood really is seeing a great improvement thanks to Habitat. But I'd like to see it just be a little bit more formalized, because I think folks moving into the neighborhood are still, they're not as connected to the city of Urbana as I think they would like to be. And there is still some reservation towards the police department. Basically anyone in uniform, it appears from the neighbors I've talked to, and I'd like to kind of alleviate that a little bit more, if possible.
There are so many people who've successfully formed lasting neighborhood associations. The Learman neighborhood is one that's a smaller neighborhood. The Huna is one of the more recent, very successful. Woona's been around for a long time, Suna, and we've got some Suna folks here, some others. Esther's been very involved with Woona, and I'm sure they can, and Elnac, and I'm sure they can share. Chris isn't here tonight, but he's been very involved with Huna, so they can give best tips, templates, how to get a neighborhood meeting going. Aaron Ammons, I'm sure, would be very interested in working with you on something like that.
Esther?
I don't know details, but in the suite of offices where Champaign-Urbana Tenant Union is located, UCAN still has a mailbox, and somebody comes and checks it now and then. So let's talk after, but I think there may be, if there are no longer people active in UCAN may still exist as an entity that you could make use of. So, and get people in, because UCAP, as Libby mentioned, that's the police, that's the citizen police thing for the neighborhood, but UCAN, United Citizens and Neighbors, was a neighborhood group, very active neighborhood group, like Woona and Suna and Huna, back in the late 80s and the 90s. And a lot of it was about zoning and the Carl expansion and all that, but I think there's still an organizational structure in place that, unless you don't want that and you want to be NUNA, but there might still even be some people associated with it. There might still be mailing lists, and things like that. So definitely we should talk about how you can access those folks if you're not in touch with them already.
Oh, absolutely.
Reports?
Yeah.
Well, of all the things that I was asked to report about, only one fits, and there was a gun fired in the 700 block, and the News Gazette reported on it, so it must be true, of West California Street. And the woman who told me about it said that there's an interesting trend going on in that block of month-to-month leases in rental houses, and that leading to a different kind of tenant who is urinating in public and doing up to all kinds of mischief. And she surmises that it's a result of all the new apartments that are going up, that a lot of students don't want to deal with rundown houses, which are then getting more rundown. And she's very concerned about that. And she did say that she has made repeated calls to the city about things on the lawn, abandoned furniture, and so I don't know what to tell her. Guess she should just keep calling. So the other things that I just briefly mentioned before, there's one here that I'm going to almost quote because I don't know how this fits in, but somebody said she wants a serious, fair investigation into the disparity of stops by race and serious consideration given to neighborhood-based policing, which has been shown to result in much fewer uses of excessive forces, assigning particular officers to particular neighborhoods, and the areas should be weighted by the number and severity of crimes in those areas, that is, the number of police assigned to that. I know we touched on that in the past, but that's something she wanted to mention again. So all the other things, I guess, go to various agencies that deal with code things.
Can I just ask, have there been reports of excessive force used by the Urbana Police Department? I mean, I haven't heard
don't
anything.
know. I'm just quoting her.
Okay, well, I'm just
request.
going to go on, record sort of saying that's an interesting
Yeah.
thought, but
Maybe it's just a general idea that she has.
Kathy?
Sometimes people watch too much TV, and they read too many things on the internet. Urbana just conducted a very thorough study of traffic stops. How long ago was that, Chief?
Well, it's
Yeah,
still ongoing.
so,
It's still ongoing.
I don't know if your Woona resident wants to go back and reinvent the wheel, or maybe.
call the police station.
Well, yeah, or
Or city council member.
or city council member, exactly. And I'll just stop there, thank you.
No, thank you very much. And the traffic stop task force report was given to council over a year ago, and we've been systematically working our way through it. The next report, I should say, of the traffic stop task force will be given on July 24th, and we'll be having our analyst from the police department give an update, and we'll be discussing that as well. And actually, we're going to be utilizing the new software, the same sort of software that produced the map we had today is going to add data to what we have on the task force. So next report, July 24th. Esther.
Just very quickly, and not only was the report on everything, the city council and mayor have done have made six individual changes in response to that report so far. The report was filled with lots of recommendations. They've already acted on 6 of them. So it's going along. Oh, and that could have just been a person who just wanted to say, I support this, who knows, but it's doing stuff.
I wanted to ask what the policy is regarding panhandlers, what the police say one should do with regard to that. There is a man who's been going around to the various parking lots. I've seen him in several of them, and yesterday he came up to me in Common Ground parking lot, and he asked for gas money for his car so he can get home to his children. He always wears a lime green shirt. He said, I'm not a bum, I work for the sprinkling agency, and a couple of other things. So I know there's panhandling where you sit with your hand out, and then there's panhandling where you go up to people, and he came right up to me. So I don't know what, if you want this reported, what we do.
Would Chief Morgan like to comment on that? The task force did provide input when we wrote the aggressive solicitation ordinance a few years ago, too. So.
Yes, we're very familiar with the gentleman that's always out of gas and dressed nicely and claims that he needs to get his pregnant wife home or to Danville or somewhere maybe. At any rate, yes, you should call us. if that happens again, we're very familiar with him, and we like to make sure that he's not doing that. And usually once we address it at an area, he'll move on. Spends a lot of time in Champaign usually because we are much better. I don't know if I will say we're much better. We're much more vigilant at addressing the panhandling situation in Urbana. That's why you don't see a lot of people on the side of the road doing that, but you will see it in Champaign.
Okay. Any other neighborhood reports? Any events coming up? Okay. All right, we will we'll get a schedule out for the meetings for the rest of the year. We are going to be doing some new communication. I want to get some new communication things going from the city, and one of them we're working on is a newsletter that would be coming out monthly, hopefully starting in August. We've got the template ready to go and the design. It's just a matter of getting the content and getting that going. So that'll probably start in August, and that's something that then can be shared with the neighborhood groups as well. I used to do it for my ward, and I'm kind of expanding it to go citywide. So there's that. Let's see. I think, unless there's no further business, I think we're done for now, and we'll send out a schedule. This is quarterly, so this is June. Yeah, September. Jolinda.
We'd be okay doing it that. I was just trying to avoid the same quarter that Civilian Police Review Board meets so that we don't run into a problem with the meeting.
Which actually we're conflicting with another commission actually tonight. But they're upstairs. They're fine.
We'll just change it and let us
Yeah,
know.
I will. We'll figure it out. Okay, but we'll stick to 5:30 on a Wednesday. I just don't know exactly which Wednesday it's going to be. Thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned.